Hi, good morning, and welcome to another in our post-cabinet press briefing series. This morning we will outline decisions of cabinet as well as have presentations from, led by our Minister of Information, the Honorable Favour Williams. We will also have presentations from other members of the cabinet, but I will hand over now to our Minister for her to give us the decisions of cabinet, and then we will take your questions.
Thank you, Minister Morgan. Let me acknowledge our Permanent Secretary, Dr. Grace McLean, our CEO, Chief Education Officer, Dr. Troop, members of the team from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, members of the media. Good morning, all. We'll begin with the social pension program for the elderly. Cabinet gave approval for the implementation of the new social pension program by the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, which will target elderly persons 75 years and older. These individuals should not be in receipt of a pension or any other retirement income, old age, or disability benefit. To qualify for this new pension program, the individual should not be a resident in a government institutionalized care facility, should not be in receipt of social assistance through PATH, Poor Relief, or the National Insurance Scheme. The new pension program will provide $3,400 per month to each beneficiary, and it will be the index benefit levels to half of the minimum pension under the National Insurance Scheme. For the next item, it's a proposal for increased benefits to government pensioners. Cabinet gave approval for the increased benefits to government pensioners with effect from April 1, 2020 as follows. Persons who receive up to $41,667 per month will now receive an additional $2,300 per month. Persons who receive between $41,668 to $54,167 per month will now get an additional $1,800 per month. Pensioners who receive between $54,168 to $83,333 per month will now get an additional $1,450 per month. Pensioners who receive $83,334 and over per month will get an additional $1,450 per month. We'll move on now to the privatization of the Jamaica Exotic Flavors and Essences Company Limited. Cabinet gave approval for the privatization of the JEFE, which includes the sale of the assets, the involuntary winding up, and any other legal options available for winding up. The mandate of the JEFE was to utilize Jamaica's primary agricultural products and appropriate technology to extract high levels of flavor compounds for sale to the international market. The company had not been operating commercially and had ceased related activities since 2012. It had also not been adding value to the operations of the government of Jamaica. Goodwill and value of the brand of the company were valued at 25 million Jamaican dollars. The following relates to the National Housing Trust and the Special Benefits Order for Windcrest Hills Housing Division, St. Catherine, Hellshire 2. The Cabinet gave approval for the promulgation of a special benefit order effective November 30th, 2020, to facilitate the allocation of 11 housing solutions at the Windcrest Hills Housing Development in St. Catherine, Hillshire 2, to certain groups of contributors to the National Housing Trust. Cabinet also approved the issuance of drafting instructions to the Chief Parliamentary Council to facilitate the promulgation of the said special benefit order. There's also another special benefit order for Twickenham Glades Housing Development, St. Catherine. Cabinet gave approval for the promulgation of a special benefit order effective November 30, 2020, to facilitate the allocation of 30 housing solutions at the Twickenham Glades Housing Development in St. Catherine to certain groups of contributors to the National Housing Trust. Cabinet also approved the drafting instructions to the Chief Parliamentary Council to facilitate the promulgation of the said special benefit order. The following are reports that Cabinet received and approved. They are Jamaica International Free Zone Development Limited, 2017-2018, Water Resources Authority, 2018-2019, the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, ECJ, 2019-2020, National Education Trust, NET, 2015-2016, Annual Performance Report of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, 2019-2020, National Housing Trust, 2019-2020, Port Authority Management Services Limited, 2017-2018, Kingston Container Terminal Services Limited, KCT, 2015-2016, National Road Operating and Constructing Company Limited, NROC, 2018-2019 and 2019-2020. We'll move on now to the contracts. Cabinet gave approval for the award of a contract to NF Barnes Construction and Equipment Company Limited for the retaining wall construction works to address the breakaway along Gordontown Road in St. Andrew in the amount of $187,662,532. The roadway collapsed during heavy rains associated with the tropical storm Eta in November 2020, which left many residents marooned, with some opting to walk across what was left of the thoroughfare or risk a dangerous bike ride. While touring the area shortly after the heavy rains, the Prime Minister indicated that it would cost the government some $200 million to effect repairs to the road. The approval of this contract means the work will begin shortly, and once completed, residents will be able to utilize the corridor. Cabinet gave approval for the award of a contract to Health Brands Limited for the provision of X-ray films and chemicals for a period of 2 years on an as-needed basis to the National Health Fund in the amount of $351,603,157. Cabinet gave approval for the award of a contract for the procurement of a reagent lease agreement, lab services within Southeast Regional Health Authority for a period of 3 years to Lasco Distributors Limited in the amount of US $3,719,297.46, excluding GCT. There was also the award of contract to Grace Kennedy Payment Services Limited for the provision of coin collection services on behalf of the Bank of Jamaica for a period of 1 year beginning February 1, 2021 in the amount of $63,344,875, inclusive of GCT. There was also the award for a third variation of contract in the amount of US $540,000 to a contract ordinarily awarded by the Jamaica Tourist Board to Finn Partners for the provision of global public relations services for a 6-month period, October 2020 to March 2021. Cabinet also gave approval for the Dornoch and Greater Dormouth Water Supply Rehab and Upgrading Project in Trelawney, St. Anne. This is a Phase 1, Barron Hill to Samuel Prospect transmission main replacement in the amount of $200,596,875 to Bacchus Engineering Works Limited. Cabinet gave approval for the supply and delivery of uniforms for the staff at the National Water Commission in the amount of $96,042,348 plus GCT to Designs by Mark Limited. And that concludes the major decisions of Cabinet for this period. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Minister, for the comprehensive report on the Cabinet deliberations. We are seeing our members of the media who are on our Zoom platform ahead of our guest who would be joining us this morning as well. We will just take questions then from members of the media, and following which we may then have our special guest. We can show our Zoom members of the media on platform. All right, so our first question then comes from Edmund Campbell from the Gleaner Company. Edmund, good morning to you.
Good morning, Minister, morning, everyone. A few questions. In relation to the social pension program, can you just give us a little more detail? When will this be implemented? And tell us a little more about tell us about the application process. In relation to the contract awarded for the works at Gordon Town, the $187 million contract, can you give us a timeline for those works? When is it actually expected to start, and when is it expected to be completed? And on a slightly different matter from what you spoke to this morning, could you just tell us what's the thinking behind bringing to an end the JUTC free ride initiative for frontline workers? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edmund. Minister is about to make a response to you.
Thank you. In terms of the first question, you'd ask, when is the new social pension program? When will that be implemented? My understanding is that it is in effect now in terms of the application process and so on. I would imagine that the Ministry of Labor and Social Security would have detailed that process. Additionally, I know that the ministry has information with regards to pensioners, persons who are of a certain age. So I believe internally at the ministry and externally by the persons who are eligible that that process would have started and would have been communicated to those persons. In terms of the second question with regards to the work on the Gordon Town Road, as you know, following the approval by Cabinet, then the particular ministry would then have to go through the contract process in terms of getting the sign-off, the necessary insurance in place. So there is some amount of time that has to be allowed for that, maybe a month or so, to get all that documentation together before the work can begin. I don't have a specific date right now, but considering the imperative to get this done, I am sure that the NWA has prioritized it as best as they can. And with regards to the JUTC, the suspension of the free ride for frontline workers, I heard this morning on the media while coming to work, I heard the JUTC talk about this, and it relates to the fact that they have lost significant revenues during the pandemic, and this is an effort to begin to recoup some of those revenues. They are in a very kind of bad deficit situation right now. And this was a program that was launched for a period of time, and so as the JUTC seeks to bring its operations back in line, it is trying to ensure that its finances begin to rebuild again so that we have a sustainable public transportation system.
Thank you, Minister. We'll continue to ask members of the media who have questions to use the raise hand feature on Zoom. That we'll be happy to take your questions. May I also acknowledge the presence of the Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Horace Chang, or the Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, I beg your pardon, who has joined us. Dr. Chang, ladies and gentlemen of the media, members of the public, you'd recall yesterday he made a comprehensive statement concerning security matters in Parliament, and he is also here to respond to any questions. Minister, you may want to ask Minister Chang if he would just reiterate the highlights of his presentation yesterday, perhaps, while I believe some persons are having just a little technical issue concerning the raise hand feature, so we may be able to just have a recap of what Minister said, and then we'll continue with questions from the media.
Okay. Minister Chang.
Thank you, Minister Williams, Mr. Morgan, and members of the Permanent Secretary. Thank you for the opportunity. Good morning to those who are here and those who are online listening. All right, let me be as brief as possible and then take the questions. Essentially, besides recognizing the trauma of the event last Sunday, I indicated clearly that the government has made significant investment in our security forces and that it is having an impact. The security forces have demonstrated a much more efficient response in terms of a number of criminal activity. But I had to remind the country that the level of criminal activity is above what would be considered normal police capacity at this point in time. We have been for the last 20 years running over 1,000 murders. The police force, even if expanded as it was equipped, cannot deal with that in any single year. As a matter of fact, it's just not something you'll overcome in that with any immediacy. And we will continue to invest and expand and develop the equipment of the police force to be able to deal with that and bring the level of homicides down to a more manageable level. And in fact, bring it down to a level where normal policing at the indicated levels of about 14,000 establishment will be able to deal with it. So we have a way to go, but the government is committed to doing it, to getting the job done, and we want to reassure the country we are taking steps to improve the efficiency of the police force is working and will get us in a better space in due course. But we're at a bad point still in terms of the numbers of homicides, and we do think we need additional tools. Some we are doing. Legislation takes time. We may have been a bit slower than we should be, but it does take time to prepare complex legislation. It goes through the process with the lawyers. Those are coming. In the short term, I've indicated that I still think the level of homicide is at a level that special measures are required. In fact, there are specific areas, and I think the Constitution allows that at this point in time. I expect it to be somewhat controversial. I indicate I do not think the way it is interpreted at this point in time by the public, that the opposition has a right to veto serious executive action. The Constitution must be a restraint, but it should not be so structured that any opposition can hold the government to ransom, literally, in any way, in a matter as critical as that which requires the government to protect the lives of innocent citizens. That is a challenge at this point in time, and I'm prepared to debate it, because when you're getting the level of, I said, well, 1,000 is a benchmark many people use. The experts indicate to me you need to get to a level of, in the current situation in Jamaica, you cannot look to sustainable reduction, even with a fully equipped police force at the numbers we're at, until you get to about 800 homicides per 100,000, 800 homicides for the island, and your homicide rate goes below 32 per 100,000. Those are numbers we're playing with. Of course, numbers are statistics and can always be interpreted and somewhat predicted in different ways. But the reality is we're having a large number of our citizens being killed, and they're focused on a number of areas. And I then note, if we examine what we call in security terms the southern belt of the Carpet area, and the area that ranges from Bull Bay in the east to Marvel in the west, we need extraordinary powers to deal with what is a chronic, endemic epidemic of crime in that area. We are having second and third generation gangsters, and the interplay of gang conflict will always be devastating until we get to another level down there in terms of security and in terms of having invested significantly in the social infrastructure down there. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Minister, for just an overview of what you had said in Parliament yesterday. I believe there are two persons who have indicated that they are having some questions, but they are having difficulties on their own device because our platform is quite all right here. In the meantime, I'll relate their questions to you, ministers. Edmund Campbell, again, from the Gleaner, has a question, and then we'll take the one being written by the two persons who are having technical issues on their side. So, Edmund, let's go back to you.
Thank you, Naomi. Dr. Chan, you have repeated your comments in Parliament yesterday about a democratically elected administration cannot be vetoed in carrying out executive action in the face of a crisis. Clearly, you're alluding to enhanced power, or to put it bluntly, the states of emergency. Minister, this matter, as you have indicated, it has been appealed. The government has taken the matter to the appeals court, waiting for a determination. But should the appeals court uphold the ruling of the Supreme Court, what steps will the government take, seeing that you feel so strongly about this issue that we need this enhanced security arrangement to deal with the current crime problem that we're having?
Let me answer the question with what with my conclusion. First, I think the state of public emergency applied in Jamaica in the last 2 years could be a model for use by any democratic elected government in the region and anywhere where they are challenged by extreme violence, because it has been administered in a manner that has certainly not only protected lives, as we have seen the significant reduction in the areas where it's applied, but it has been applied in a manner that has protected the rights of the citizens in every way. We have had very few complaints of any level of brutality by the security forces. We have had no single any shooting that could be described as extrajudicial, and that's just a fact of it. The judges have questioned the length of detention, and that's an issue to be decided by the appeal court in terms of the role of the review panel and the time for which they can be detained. I don't want to anticipate any subsequent steps. It is the interpretation of a particular judge of section of the Constitution. We'll have to examine that as we go forward, depending on which way the decision goes. I'm confident that the lawyers who have advised on the appeal are confident of success, and I accept that at this point in time. But I do think the government, as a established democracy, should have the right to take whatever measures are necessary. The constraint should not be based on the whim and fancy of the opposition at a particular time, irrespective of what the opposition is. It's the Constitution that should provide a restraint. And if the government exceeds this authority or its power, we go to court and they have the consequences. In the current situation, it depends on a particular opposition member can decide and prevent action. That I don't think is proper, and that should be examined.
Thank you, Minister. I see Mr. Herman Green from TVJ trying to get through with his question. Herman, is your mic now working? All right, I know he has said he's having some technical difficulties. He also typed a question then. I believe I'll ask Minister Morgan if he'd be able to take this one. According to Mr. Green from TVJ, there are suggestions that yesterday's grilling of the Labour Ministry's officials is part of a plan to, his words, get rid of officials there, and he's asking for a comment. I see where there are some people in social media as well who've suggested that, so it's a good time to have an official response to that. Minister Morgan, good morning.
Naomi, I'm not aware of a practice by this government to act in such a manner. The accountability processes exist. They're very transparent and they're very clear. You could make an argument if you wish about the questioning, but then you'd have to base that argument on whether the questioning was fair and unfair. I cannot make such a judgment. That is for the committee to decide in their right as legislators how they interrogate matters that are before them. I don't know of any merit to the accusation. I've seen no evidence of it, and that is not how this government functions. And just to make an accusation like that without evidence is a bit irresponsible, I think. Until the evidence arrives, then I can just dismiss it forthwith.
Thank you, Minister Morgan. I also now recognize Mr. Michael Sharp of JNN with a question. Mr. Sharp? All right. I believe he may be having some difficulties. Mr. Sharp, are you able to speak? All right, we have... Okay, wonderful. All right, so our platform is working quite well. I believe he's now trying to switch over to another. I see him trying to switch over on our Zoom platform to another computer. For members of the media, we do ask that they come on a little earlier than the start to ensure that we test all the systems and have a very smooth press conference. Let me just apologize to members of the public. Sometimes not on our end, but on the end of the person who may be asking a question, that there are some technical difficulties. All right, so having not then seen any further raised hands in this segment, may I thank members of the media who have joined us on our Zoom platform for attending today's post-cabinet media briefing. We thank the Minister of Education, Youth and Information, the Honourable Favour Williams. Also as well, our special guest minister this morning, the Honourable Dr. Horace Chang, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, as well as the Minister of State and the Minister of Education, Youth and Information, the Honourable Robert Morgan. We also have officials from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information here, Dr. Grace McLean, the Acting Permanent Secretary, as well as Dr. Kassan Troop, the Acting Chief Education Officer in the Ministry, as well as other officials from the Ministry. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this morning for a brief and comprehensive report on the deliberations of Cabinet, which would have also highlighted issues emerging from the retreat last weekend. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. Good morning.